Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Paddy. This week we will be finishing up our discussion of The Invasion. We will be discussing the final 4 episodes, the characters, and giving the story a final score out of 5.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts on this story, so to join the discussion, you can check us out at Time Team, that's TimeTeamp on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. Now though, as we always do, I will hand over to Paddington for the story recap.
Yay! Episode 5. A shocked Jamie asks where the Cybermen could have come from, but the Doctor says they need to leave and go back to the Brigadier. Back at the unit base, Turner tells the girls that the police will be taking over the investigation to bring down Vaughan, and Isabel laments that she will be missing out on a great opportunity for her photography career. Turner says he'll make it up to her by buying her dinner, but before they can flirt any further, the Doctor and Jamie arrive. They tell the trio about the Cybermen and that there are probably thousands of them, but they have no idea where they could be stored. Turner goes to inform the Brigadier, but before he goes, the Doctor asks him about the reports of people who return from Vaughan's office acting strangely. Zoe tells them that the Cybermen are capable of controlling the minds of people that they capture, and the Doctor asks who the Brigadier reports to. The Brigadier is in fact in Rutledge's office, incredulous at being told to stop investigating Vaughan and international electromatics. He notices Rutledge's strange behaviour and asks what influence Vaughan has over him. Rutledge orders the Brigadier and his men to leave Vaughan alone, but the Brigadier says he will go over his head and report to Unit's Central Command in Geneva. After the Brigadier leaves, Rutledge calls Vaughan and tells him about the Brigadier's plans to contact Geneva. Vaughan then asks him how much time it will take for Unit Command to respond, but Rutledge starts to stammer, as if coming out of a trance, but Vaughan orders him to come to his office immediately. After a brief internal struggle, Rutledge obeys Vaughan and starts to make his way over to the office. Packer is concerned that they could be losing control of Rutledge, but Vaughan reassures him that all will be fine. Rutledge arrives at the office and tells Vaughan that he has at most 2 days before the unit forces arrive. Vaughan orders Packer to prepare Watkins' machines for a test, and he then dismisses him so that he can deal with Rutledge. He opens the secret panel and tells the computer that the invasion needs to be brought forward. The computer says the invasion force is not ready, and his request needs to be assessed, but Vaughan demands that the invasion commence tomorrow morning. The computer transmits the message and replies to Vaughan that his order will be followed. In the warehouse, Packer orders the Cybermen forces to their assembly points in preparation for the invasion. Vaughan arrives and orders one of the Cybermen to be partially reactivated so they can test Watkins' machine on it. Gregory is reluctant to do so, but Vaughan orders him to do it and tells him to use the machine's emotion generator to instill fear in the Cybermen. The effect is instantaneous, with the Cybermen crying out in terror before tearing free from the machine and staggering off down into the sewer. Packer says that they should stop it lest it harm an innocent person, but Vaughan callously says anyone down in the sewer deserves to die. Back at the unit base, the Doctor and the Brigadier are looking at the map of the sewer system around the International Electromatics building, trying to ascertain where the Cybermen could be gathering. Isabel is skeptical of the whole thing, and Turner echoes the sentiment, saying to the Brigadier that Unit Central Command will need proof before they can act. The Doctor says they need to first focus on how the attack will take place, and asks Jamie for the radio Vaughan gave him. He then asks the Brigadier to give him any international electromatics products that they have on hand, and Turner takes him to see them. After they leave, Isabel and the Brigadier discuss the need for proof before a unit can intervene, and she suggests using her photography equipment, which is infrared film, to take pictures of the Cybermen from a safe distance using a telescopic lens. However, she is deeply offended when he says it is no job for a woman and that his men should do it. He departs to organise a surveillance team, and after he leaves, Jamie agrees with the Brigadier's opinion, causing Isabel and Zoe to storm off with the intention of carrying out the assignment themselves. Jamie tries to get them to wait for the Doctor, but follows on after them when they leave. Meanwhile, the Doctor finds the same superfluous circuitry in the unit equipment as that was in Jamie's radio, but still can't fathom what it is for. He says he will go back to Watkins' house to use it as a base of operations. He goes to find the others, but the Brigadier says that he hasn't seen them since his earlier conversation. The radio operator informs him that the young trio took out one of the jeeps and headed back to London under the pretense of following the instructions from the Brigadier. The Brigadier calls the jeep, which is being driven by Corporal Benton, but he is too late as Benton informs him that he dropped off the others already near the International Electromatics building. The Brigadier orders him to try and call them back, and he then instructs Turner to take over command of the troops in the field. The Doctor says he will go with Turner to see if he can find out the reason for the unnecessary circuits, and asks the Brigadier to try and look after the others. Back at Vaughan's office, the computer reveals the extent of the invasion plan, which infuriates Vaughan. He initially agreed to help with the invasion so that the Cybermen could gain much needed materials. In return, he would be granted control of the planet. Now, however, the Cybermen intend to convert as much of the population to Cybermen and destroy any others that resist or prove unsuitable. Vaughan furiously objects to this new arrangement, and the computer says that he must be cyberized if he wishes to stay in control. Vaughan says that he will allow his body to be converted, but not his mind, and the computer relays an agreement to that proposal. He closes the secret panel and turns to talk to Packer, who has observed the whole exchange, and both realize that the Cybermen intend to double-cross them. Packer asks how they will remain safe against the Cybermen's mind-control devices, but Vaughan reminds him of their internal tech capsules, which will keep them safe. Outside, Jamie, Zoe, and Isabel enter the sewer moments after Benton and a passing policeman spot them. They make their way into the tunnel, and Zoe spots something moving towards them. Isabel takes several photos of an approaching Cyberman, but Jamie pulls her away when he thinks that they have enough to take back to the unit base with them. Meanwhile, the policeman has followed the trio into the tunnel, but is killed by a pair of Cybermen. The trio then find themselves trapped between the policeman's killers and the one coming down the other tunnel, which is revealed to be the terror-stricken Cyberman from the warehouse. Episode 6. Jamie pushes the girls back against the wall as the tormented Cyberman approaches them, but it staggers past them down into the tunnel. They then hear the echo of Turner's voice calling out to them as he has led a rescue squad into the sewers to find them. Isabel goes to call back to him, but Jamie stops her, saying that she could alert the other Cybermen to their location. Meanwhile, Turner and his squad realize that the tunnels are too vast to explore, and he decides to try and contact the Brigadier for reinforcements. However, they come face to face with the pair of Cybermen who killed the policeman. The Cybermen order them not to resist and to follow their instructions. Turner orders his men to prepare grenades, and they use the distraction of the newly arrived tormented Cybermen to throw them. They kill 2 of the Trey Cybermen, and the last one starts to get to its feet, causing one of the unit's soldiers to flee, but he is killed by the Cybermen's chest unit. Turner and his remaining men throw more grenades to cover their retreat to the ladder and call out for the trio to join them so they can all head back to the surface. Turner asks Jamie to cover the rear whilst they try and get the girls up first. Jamie then makes his way up the ladder, but he is followed by the Cyberman, who grabs onto his leg to prevent him from escaping. One of the soldiers batters the Cyberman with his rifle to break its grip on Jamie, and when it falls back into the tunnel, Benton throws a grenade down after it, seemingly destroying it. Back at Watkins' home, the doctor is continuing to examine the circuits, but to no success. The Brigadier enters and says that Isabel is developing her photos, which he will then take to Geneva to present to the Central Command in the hopes that they can act upon it. However, he says that it could be a few days before any action is taken, and the doctor says that it may be too late. The trio enter with the photographs, but the Brigadier apologetically says that they look like fakes, which causes Isabel to storm off. The Brigadier says that he needs undeniable proof of the Cybermen's existence, and just then the doctor seemingly makes a breakthrough. In Vaughan's office, Packer is relaying what happened in the tunnels, but Vaughan says that there needs to be no worry as the invasion will commence soon and no one will be able to stop them. He then asks for a progress report on Watkins' machine, and Gregory arrives with Watkins, who presents the Cerebratron machine to Vaughan, telling him it is too dangerous to use. Vaughan doesn't seem to be too concerned with this as he examines the machine, and Watkins then asks for Isabel to be freed, and Vaughan distractedly tells him that she is already free. He then uses the machine on Watkins to fill him with fear, and Gregory tries to intervene, causing Vaughan to threaten him as well. Vaughan orders them to go back to the compound to begin producing more of the machines, and Watkins tells him how much he despises him and would kill him if given half a chance. Vaughan then gives him the opportunity to do so by giving him Packer's gun, and after a moment's hesitation, Watkins fires several rounds at Vaughan. The bullets have no effect on him due to him receiving a cybernetic implant, and Watkins faints from the stress of the ordeal. Vaughan then orders him to be taken to the compound. Back at the Watkins home, Isabel and Turner discuss the events in the sewer and the threat of the Cybermen. An urgent message comes in and Isabel goes to fetch the Brigadier. The message reveals that Benton saw Watkins being removed from the building, and Turner suggests a rescue. Isabel and the doctor request that he be rescued, and the Brigadier instructs Turner to take command of the rescue party. Later, Gregory reports the successful rescue of Watkins back to Vaughan, who has him killed by the Cybermen. Meanwhile, the doctor asks Watkins about the alien circuits, but he says he knows nothing about them. He tells him about Vaughan's use of his machine, and the doctor realizes that Vaughan plans to use it against the Cybermen. He then realizes that the circuits are actually conducting circuits which can manipulate brainwaves. He then goes to look at the circuits again as the Brigadier departs for the unit base before heading to Geneva, leaving Turner in command. Later, the doctor reveals his finding to the others. He says the Cybermen intend to use all the orbiting international electromagnetic satellites to boost their hypnosis signal, which they will then allow them to control anyone in close proximity to the circuits. The doctor then tells Zoe to show Watkins how to counteract the hypnosis effects by crafting the depolarizer brackets for their necks. He then relays instructions to the Brigadier on how to craft and apply them as well. In Vaughan's office, the computer says that they have begun preparations for the invasion to begin. Vaughan tells Packer that he will soon be in control of the world. Meanwhile, up in space, the Cybermen ship positions itself to begin broadcasting its hypnosis ray. The following morning, the invasion is launched as the hypnosis signal beacon is broadcast throughout London, with hundreds of civilians succumbing to its effects. The Doctor falls to the ground as his depolarizer unit seems to have dislodged itself, and Zoe frantically tries to bring him back around. Turner then arrives and announces that hundreds of Cybermen have been sighted exiting sewer tunnels and manholes in the city. Episode 7. The Cybermen forces advance through the city as the hypnosis signal continues to be broadcast from the Cyberman ship. In Watkins' home, the Doctor is revived and informed that the invasion has commenced. He asks about the status of the Brigadier and his men, and the Turner radios through to him to discover that he is alright, but half of his troops are down, and that they're only getting scattered reports from the other unit groups. The Brigadier says he will send transport to collect them, as they will be safer together, and Turner comments to the Doctor that it appears that Vaughan and the Cybermen have won. In his office, Vaughan is getting a report from the computer that the full invasion force is preparing to launch, and instructs him to have the radio relay in the compound set up so that the invasion fleet can home in on it. It then says that cyber controllers will be dispatched to lead the invasion forces once they land, but Vaughan says that he will take sole command of the Cybermen instead. He says that it is necessary, as only he can help them deal with the human representatives on Earth, but the computer relays that they have no need of assistance, as all humans will be under control or killed. After some arguing back and forth, the computer relays an agreement that Vaughan will be placed in charge. Vaughan closes the panel and calls Packer and dispatches him to retrieve Watkins, as the unit troops guarding him will be under hypnotic control. Packer and his men arrive and are amazed to encounter the Doctor and the others, who are about to depart in a jeep sent by the Brigadier. Turner tells them to leave via the back entrance as Packer and his men attempt to break in. Watkins is hit in the ensuing firefight, as is Jamie, who attempts to carry him to safety whilst Turner covers their retreat. Turner radios to the Brigadier, who organises a helicopter extraction for them. Packer reports back to Vaughan, who is amazed to hear that the Doctor and the others didn't fall victim to the hypnotic broadcast. He asks Vaughan how they will be able to control the Cybermen without having Watkins under their control to produce more of his machine. But Vaughan tells him not to worry, as he says that he is the Cybermen right where he wants them. Packer asks if there is something that Vaughan potentially overlooked, leaving Vaughan to snap at him to follow his orders so the invasion can carry on. On the unit mobile operations plane, the Brigadier receives reports that the unit bases in New York, Moscow, and Peking are all out of contact, and he relays this to the recently arrived Turner and the Doctor. The Doctor says that the only way they will have a fighting chance is if they destroy the satellite relay for the hypnotic signal. The Brigadier says that they will need an orbital missile for that, but only the US and the Russians have equipment of that sort, but he then realizes something and fetches a dossier from a lockbox. He reveals that the Russian space program has a scheduled launch for that afternoon, and Turner suggests attaching a missile warhead to it instead of the astronaut capsule in order to destroy the satellite. The Brigadier says it will take a few hours to get everything sorted, and he assigns Turner the task of seeing it through whilst he and the Doctor deal with the invasion forces. The Doctor says that they will need to deal with the incoming ships, and the Brigadier suggests using anti-air missiles to take them down, and contacts Henlo Air Force Base near the compound. Zoe then arrives and says that both Watkins and Jamie are fine, but the young Highlander is furious at being assigned bed rest by the unit doctor. The Doctor then says Zoe and her skills would be best suited to helping the Brigadier, whilst he goes to talk to Vaughan. Zoe and the Brigadier both object to this by saying it's too dangerous, but the Doctor points out that they need to know how the Cybermen will retaliate when the unit starts launching missiles at them, and with what. He says they will access Vaughan's office via the sewers, as they will now be empty of Cybermen, and once inside he will open a link to the base via his communicator so they can hear what he and Vaughan talk about. The plane lands in order for the Doctor and Turner to leave for their respective missions before taking off again to go to Henlo Air Force Base. The Doctor manages to enter the sewers undetected and starts to make his way down towards Vaughan's office. The Brigadier arranges for a helicopter to be on standby in case the Doctor needs it, but Zoe says it won't be of much use to him if there are still Cybermen in the sewers. The Brigadier tells her not to worry and offers her some tea instead, failing to notice her less than impressed look. In his office, Packer starts to relay the setbacks that they are facing with the limited forces that they have to hand, and says to Vaughan that they can't proceed any further without the main invasion force. Vaughan, however, seems aloof over the whole ordeal and says that they will arrive in time. An alarm suddenly sounds and they switch on the video monitor to see the Doctor requesting an audience. Packer says that they should kill him due to all the trouble he has caused, but Vaughan reminds him that they need him alive so he can tell them about the TARDIS. The Doctor radios the Brigadier to say that he is going to Vaughan's office, and the Brigadier tells the radio operator to record everything. During their conversation, Vaughan reveals that the invasion has been in preparation for the last 5 years, saying that the whole thing has been his idea and he is prepared for all contingencies. The Doctor calls him a fool, saying that the Cybermen will come to take over from him. Vaughan says that the ground forces are conditioned to only obey him, and that he can use Watkins' machine against the rest of the fleet. The Doctor points out that one machine won't be enough, and for that, as clever as he thinks he is, Vaughan is no match for the Cybermen. Vaughan says that he knows how the Doctor somehow kept himself and the others safe, but it is all for naught. He then orders Packer to activate the radio beam to guide the rest of the invasion fleet to Earth. The Doctor begs Vaughan to listen to him as he says the Cybermen will betray him. At Henlow, the Brigadier Zoe and a squad of unit soldiers arrive at the control room and see all the personnel under the effects of the hypnotic broadcast. Zoe and the soldiers set about reviving them with the depolarizers, whilst the Brigadier gets a report about the Doctor and Turner. He then orders the base commander to prepare for the invasion fleet, but Zoe points out that due to the limited range of their radar, the fleet will nearly be on top of them before they have a chance to fire. After a while, the radar operator starts picking up multiple incoming ships, more than the base's contingent of missiles will be able to shoot down. The base commander says that they will have to take down as many as they can, but Zoe says that with a careful firing pattern, they can take out over 90% of the invasion fleet due to their attack pattern formations via chain reaction explosions. The base commander says that they wouldn't have enough time to compute the firing pattern, but Zoe says that she can do it, and the Brigadier backs her up. Zoe's calculations prove to be effective as the first batch of missiles take down dozens of Cybermen ships. Back in Vaughan's office, the computer says that due to the destruction of the ships, Vaughan is no longer in command and the Cybermen will take over the invasion themselves. Vaughan tries to attack the machine, but it repels him with a force field, and it informs him that all life on Earth will be destroyed via a Cyber Megatron bomb. The Doctor then asks Vaughan if he wants to be the ruler of a dead world. Episode 8. Isabel and Benton are listening to the events in Vaughan's office via the Doctor's radio. They radio through to the Brigadier, who along with the Henlow base commander, is congratulating Zoe for her help in destroying the Cyberman ships. Benton relays the information on the bomb, and the Brigadier says that he will come back, and he tells the base commander to keep an eye out for more incoming ships and any sign of the bomb. In his office, Vaughan says that he will not let the Cybermen succeed, and he uses Watkins' device on the computer, blowing it up. The Doctor says it won't be enough, and since that they are now on the same side, he needs to shut off the radio beam guiding the Cybermen to Earth. Vaughan, who is dazed at the ruination of his plans, slowly comprehends what the Doctor is saying and tries to contact Packer, only to see a Cyberman appear on the view screen. Packer suddenly bursts into the room, saying that the Cybermen in the building are no longer obeying his commands. As he's confronting Vaughan, a Cyberman enters the room and kills Packer after he fires a few ineffectual shots at him. The Doctor uses Watkins' machine to dispatch the Cybermen, and he then asks Vaughan where the radio beam is being transmitted from. Vaughan says it is in the compound, but that it will now most likely be under the control of the Cybermen. The Doctor calls through to the Brigadier, who had been listening in the whole time. The Brigadier says it will take at least 10 hours to attach a warhead to the Russian rocket, leaving destroying the radio transmitter at the compound as the only way to stop the invasion. The Doctor pleads with the despondent Vaughan to help them and appeals to his better nature to save humanity. However, Vaughan agrees out of his hatred for the Cybermen and their destruction of his ambitions. The Brigadier sends a helicopter to collect the two of them, and they make their way to the roof. On the unit mobile operations plane, the Brigadier is ruing the fact that he does not have enough men to launch a proper assault on the compound. A call comes in from Turner, who says the warhead has been attached to the rocket, and the Brigadier orders it to be launched in the slim chance it could reach the Cyberman ship in time. He then gets a call from the Doctor, who says that they have reached the compound but cannot wait for reinforcements lest they lose the element of surprise. The Brigadier tells him to be careful, but the Doctor says that Watkins' machine should be enough to keep them safe. He then orders Benton to have men ready for the action and agrees to let Zoe and Isabel accompany him and the others, with Isabel saying that there could be her last chance to take a photo of a Cyberman. The plane lands and the Brigadier leads his men through to the compound to assist the Doctor. The Doctor and Vaughan make their way through the compound but are spotted by a Cyberman guard who Vaughan dispatches with Watkins' machine. They head up to the roof to avoid any incoming patrols, and they eventually spot the building with the transmitter in it, but it is surrounded by armed Cybermen. They continue along the rooftops but encounter more Cyberman guards. Meanwhile, the Brigadier and his men encounter a squad of Cybermen and a firefight ensues. The unit force's small arms are ineffective against the armoured Cybermen, and the Brigadier orders them to switch to grenades and bazooka rounds instead. The Cybermen forces are eventually defeated, and the unit forces continue sweeping through the compound. The Doctor and Vaughan arrive at the rear entrance to the transmitter building and find no Cybermen guarding it, which the Doctor comments as being odd. Vaughan makes his way up the ladder to a door, but 3 Cybermen appear from behind him, and the Doctor calls out a warning. Vaughan manages to kill 2 of them before he is killed himself, leaving the 3rd Cyberman to chase the Doctor. The Brigadier and his men arrive, and he tells the Doctor to duck for cover as one of his men destroys the Cyberman with a bazooka round. The Doctor informs the Brigadier about the rear entrance, and he leads his men to take care of the transmitter, whilst the Doctor remains behind to pose for some victory pictures taken by Isabel. Later on the mobile operations plane, The Brigadier is relaying the information that the transmitter is destroyed, thereby stopping any more invasion forces from landing. However, he points out that the main Cyberman ship is still intact and therefore still a threat. He says that the Russian rocket should reach it in about 6 hours, and in the interim, every available unit soldier should prepare to repel any Cybermen still lurking around. He is interrupted by a call from Henlow Base saying that something large has just arrived at the edge of the radar range, but it is staying there. The Doctor says that the Cybermen most likely came close to Earth, so it should be easier to launch their bomb. Zoe says that it was a risky move as they are now closer to the Russian rocket, but the Doctor fears that it could have passed the Cyberman ship already. The Brigadier gets in contact with Turner, who says the launch of the rocket was delayed due to a technical error, but they notice the approach of the Cyberman ship and are now recalibrating its trajectory, which will take about 12 and a half minutes. The Brigadier and the Doctor fear that the Cybermen could launch their bomb within that time. A tense waiting game begins, which is eventually broken when a report comes that the Russian rocket is approaching its target. Unfortunately, the Cybermen launched their bomb mere moments after the rocket came into view. The base commander Henlow orders a counter barrage to stop the bomb, and after an initial miss, the bomb is intercepted and destroyed, mere moments before the Russian rocket hits and destroys the Cyberman ship. Back in the countryside, Isabel and Turner return the travellers to the field and watch as the Doctor disappears into the still invisible TARDIS. He makes it visible again, and Turner and Isabel stare dumbfounded when the trio wave their goodbyes before stepping into the TARDIS and taking off. End of the story.
Very good, very good.
Thank you, thank you. Take that, you lousy Cybermen. So we can now relish our victory by taking a visit to the trivia spot. So what information do you have for the second half of this story?
Thank you very much. So the air dates for episodes 5 through 8 is the 30th of November to the 21st of December 1968. As we mentioned last week, the writer and director for the story are Derek Sherwin and Douglas Camfield, respectively. At the end of episode 8, a special credit appeared on screen, which read, "The BBC wish to acknowledge the help given to them by the Ministry of Defence in the making of this programme." A lot of the locations was provided by the MOD. I do wonder if they kind of saw it as kind of unit could be used as like a recruitment thing.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like the way like the US Air Force supports like SG-1 and stuff.
Yeah. See the world, fight aliens, join the territorial army.
This story was intended to sort of prove how well Earth-based stories could work, particularly like contemporary Earth-based stories, and that they could be done cheaply and they could be done really effectively. It was the most expensive story they had done to date and remained so for several years afterwards. And to us, watching the story, you can completely understand why it was so expensive.
Yeah, like I can imagine like with some of those location shots, where like squadrons of Cybermen are like walking down like various London landmarks. I imagine like that cost a fucking pretty penny like to shut those areas down for the day so they could film it,
Yeah, and actually speaking of the London landmarks, so St. Paul's Cathedral is probably the one that most people think of when they think of this story. It was a very iconic picture. It was on Radio Times. Actually, they put it on Radio Times before episode 1 even went out, kind of ruining the whole giveaway at the end of episode 4. But I know Dougie originally wanted them to also be at Tower Bridge, Houses of Parliament, and Hyde Park. And I'm guessing for time reasons and maybe budget, they didn't do that. So the St. Paul's Cathedral one was the big, that was the big money shot, for lack of a better word. There's a couple of things that were cut or re-edited in the story. So the scene where Unit recaptures Watkins had to be scrapped because there wasn't enough time to film it. So you're kind of watching like, oh, we're going to go save Watkins, and it just cuts to Gregory being like, they saved Watkins. And you're like, how the fuck did they manage that? So to save money and time, they just had Gregory describe what happened, because that's the same.
Yeah,
as us seeing it.
Well, to be fair, like we've seen some really good fan movies, so maybe like this could be like a Doctor Who fan version of Rogue One, filling the gap of how Watkins was saved.
Interestingly, then mentioning Gregory, Gregory was killed in the sewers by the Cybermen, which to me, like the jump from him in the office to him in the sewers is really weird.
It's very Family Guy cutaway gag.
Yeah, but it even like you're watching going hold like it actually takes your brain a second to catch up with the fact that that was meant to be like a small time skip.
Yeah.
The reason for that is that's not originally the way the scene was meant to go. Benton originally killed Gregory during the battle.
Hmm.
So when they didn't have a battle, they had to do something to get rid of him. So they recorded that after the fact to insert into the episode. Speaking of shooting people,
Hmm.
Rutledge, so the Brigadier's senior boss, whatever,
Hmm.
he was originally meant to be forced to shoot himself by Vaughan. It was filmed, but it was cut before broadcast for being too dark, one would imagine, and so it is lost forever.
Very strange tangential leap, but what
Yeah.
came into my mind? David Tennant's portrayal as Kilgrave in Jessica Jones.
Mm,
Just telling you, was like, just shoot yourself in the head, and I just yeah.
yeah. So we'll get to it in a couple of weeks, but just to say, it was during this story that Fraser Hines announced his intention to leave. Sad face.
Sad face.
But he won't be leaving for a few weeks, so we're
Yeah,
good.
and as well, I suppose, like at that stage, he had established a legacy that would rival like some of like obviously we talked about Ian and Barber, like for there for the first 16 stories, but like he's established a legacy that has gone on for like decades now.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think like when it comes to like classic companions of the first and second Doctor, I think Jamie's probably the one that comes to mind the most for
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
because he was there for Patrick's entire run, effectively, bar that first story.
Yeah. So, once again, thank you very much for all that wonderful, strange information. um, Unlike last week, this week we'll be giving our full character discussion as to how we thought the guys performed over the course of the entire story, as well, and then we'll be giving our score of 5 at the end of the character discussion. So, as always, we have the Doctor and we have Jamie and Zoe. And just to refresh your guys' memories, the characters that we're talking about in terms of companions and villains, there is the Brigadier, Isabel, and Turner for companions, and then there is Vaughan, Packer, and the Cybermen this time for the villains. So, the Doctor.
Yes. Um, Overall, I think like going episodes 1 through 8, and particularly episodes 5 through 8,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really good outing for Patrick. We got to see, particularly in episodes 7 and 8, in his interactions with Vaughan.
Mm-hmm.
We really got to see some key things about the Doctor that like future Doctors do really well.
Yeah.
Like he went to Vaughan to try and convince him to side with humanity.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that he doesn't villainize Vaughan forever. As
No.
soon as Vaughan, commits to helping him, that's it. It's the two of them together. They're going to figure it out and they're going to get it done. And I like that. I like that there's no grudge held. Do you know?
No.
It's clearly, okay, this guy made a mistake. We're on the same side now. Everything else he's done, not that it's irrelevant. Obviously, it was really important. People died, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
the priority now is to stop them, and we're going to do that together, which I like. And I
Yeah.
think Patrick did it really well, where it's very natural.
Yeah. Because I suppose if you think about it, it's like, oh, there's loads of examples in different genres of stuff where someone who has that's actually even later on down the line in Doctor Who when it comes to a certain recurring
Mm.
other member of the Doctor species, where it's like you could be so brilliant, like like international electromatics has become like a leading brand
Mm.
in technological equipment and technological advances, and that was all for the purpose of Vaughan's thing to take over the world. If Vaughan could be rehabilitated, think what he could do for the betterment of the world. And like that's something that obviously after his war crimes trial, that would inevitably, had he survived, come about. That's the type of thing maybe that was in the Doctor's mind.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen um, more of a reflection from the Doctor after Vaughan's death,
Yeah,
because it kind of like you have this sort of humorous him running away grabbing his arse, which is very funny. And I'd always wondered where that clip was from. Now I
yeah,
know. The humorous thing of him running away, grabbing his arse. Obviously, he dives down when the brigadier tells him to,
Yeah.
and then he's posing for pictures with Isabel, and that I think that's a bit callous is the wrong word, but like
I think it's very like Vaughan dies in a very violent way.
mm,
In the sense of, he uses the machine against two, and one of them it misses one, and the other one shoots Vaughan. And
yeah,
like the way that the effects for the Cybermen's guns work, because this time they're actually using proper guns, rifles. It's like there's an explosive quality to it,
yeah,
and like Kevin Stoney, like he does an amazing job selling that death screen.
mm,
And then you got the whole thing of the doctor, like, running, clutching his bum, and every time a shot goes off, he jumps in the air, and like as you said, it's funny. It will never not be funny, but having that 2 seconds after like a very violent moment, it does seem very at odds tonally.
yeah, and unfortunately, it kind of paints the doctor in a bad light that he's not, you
Yeah.
know,
One thing, like and I think it's great. Or sorry, there's two other two notes that I have. Is it's very into the lion's den is the motto for the doctor in this story.
mm,
He goes back via the sewers where he's not guaranteed that there's no Cybermen are still in there. There's no Cybermen there, and he walks into Vaughn's office and he's like, "I want to speak to you." And it's like, again, it's a very nice. Oh, like we see it time and time again. Like, but it's very Q and Picard type
yeah.
thing. Um,
I think the thing with that as well is the fact that like he knows Packer, like Packer has been presented up until that point, and we'll talk about Packer a bit
yeah,
in a bit, but Packer has been presented as that shoot first, ask questions later type.
yeah.
And even at this point in the episode, Packer is advocating for killing the doctor because the doctor is
The cause
in
for
the
all their
way,
woes. Yeah.
you know. So I think it's bravery, it's naivety, stupidity,
Hmm.
all of it. It really sort of shows that the doctor is a how would you call it? What's the cross between a Slytherin and a Gryffindor?
A Sliffador.
Slytherin? Yeah.
Lion pissed off. One other thing that I like, and I think this is probably Patrick's forte more so than we saw with Will, is watching Science Doctor is great.
Mm.
Watching frustrated Science Doctor is even better because he gets so pissed off when he can't figure out what the circuits are for.
Yeah, and we kind of had a bit of that last week. You sort
Yeah,
of get the sense with this doctor that he understands the science and he's perfectly willing to use it, but fuck me, does he hate it? Like,
yeah, he absolutely he hates being bested by technology,
yeah,
and we I don't think we ever saw that with Bill.
no, I think Bill was more, oh, this is wonderful or whatever.
Yeah,
He saw those interactions from a this is
yeah,
an amazing piece of technology perspective,
yeah,
whereas Patrick sees it as fuck you,
yeah.
do what you're told, stop
So
being
yeah,
annoying.
and and he does it so well. Like he really really does it very well. So like I agree with you. I think this was especially the second half. This
Mm.
was a really good performance from Troughton, I think.
Yeah, and the second half gave that nice balance as well because we had the sciencey side, but then we also had those interactions with Vaughan, which I think are brilliant.
Yeah.
Like the two of them trying to figure out what they're going to be doing and stuff. Like that was fantastic.
Oh, it was great. Actually, based on some of our recent conversations, very Garrick and Ducat.
I actually have a separate comparison for Vaughan that is DS9 related that I will get to later. Let's just stick a pin in
Okay, stick a pin in
DS9
it, please. Yeah, yeah.
comparisons.
But because one of my favorite moments from DS9, as like a small segue, is Way of the Warrior when the Klingons are attacking the station,
Mm.
and you just got like Ducat and Garrick meet each other in the hallway, and all of a sudden Garrick just kind of goes, "Oh, who would have thought we would have standing side by side?" That's just fucking brilliant.
Or like I can't remember what one it was, but there's one. It might be that same one where like Garrick says to Ducat, like you should have, or no, Ducat says to Garrick, I should have killed you when I had the chance, and Garrick is like, you tried.
I think that might be the same one as they're fucking trying to survive between. Yeah,
Yeah, I can see it in my mind's eye. I think the station was under attack.
yeah.
It was either that one or it was one where I don't know if Garrick was introduced where the Ducat had built in like this failsafe thing, and then he got caught in the
I fucking
station
love
while
that
it was
episode.
while it was
That's
inactive.
such a good episode. But let's talk about this good episode.
Yeah.
So, is that the Doctor covered?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. So we have Jamie and Zoe, who I sometimes call Zamie and Joey. So who do you want to go with first?
um, let's go with Jamie first, because we actually don't see a whole lot of Jamie in the latter half of the story, particularly in the last 2 episodes.
No. And
Um,
I was going to say about that aspect of it
mm,
when it comes the natural discussion point.
yeah, so my thing on Jamie in this is okay. Jamie is clearly channeling Ben from the moon base
Yes,
at
yes,
one
he
point,
is. Yes, he is.
where the brig makes his comment about how Isabel and Zoe have no place in the sewers and it's men's work, and Jamie is kind of like, yeah, well, he's right though. And I think, doesn't Isabel something like, oh, so you mean men are stronger than women? And he's like, yep,
Yeah.
yes, I do.
Yeah.
But what I find funny about that is, there's a little twinkle in his eye that you can tell that he's kind of doing it to rile them up a bit. But also, he's so fucking whipped. He is so whipped because they drag him off afterwards.
But it's great, like, because like he it's almost like he's trying to like impress the brigadier, because he's like, like, he's not wrong, it's like that little Fraser Hines does it so well, like that little kind of peacock preening moment.
Yeah, but then like he's so whipped that like he literally says that like he agrees with the brigadier and whatever, and then the 2 girls just drag him off, and he has zero say in it whatsoever. It's just like, oh yeah, the big strong man is it fucking whipped by two by 2 girls.
But no, I completely agree with you. He is so whipped.
And other than being whipped, the only other thing he does is very gallantly gets shot, and then we don't see him again until the end of the episode.
Yeah, like, so I think he's stronger in the first half of the story.
Hmm.
And it did annoy me with the kind of the channeling of the Ben, but it's when he gets shot, right? Fraser Hines does such a good job of, like, letting out like the yell of getting hit, that I'm actually concerned for him.
Yeah.
And it's like, Jesus, is Jamie okay? Is like, are we like experiencing another, like, a Katarina moment here? Because like, I just, and like, you're waiting for a moment, like you're waiting for like it's only like, what, 2 minutes, but it feels like ages until Zoe says that, oh yeah, he's fine, he's given out about the fact that he has to stay in bed.
Yeah, but I'd almost would have preferred if at some point between when he gets shot and the very, like, it's literally the very end
Yeah,
of the story, like it's the last scene.
yeah,
I almost would have preferred if they went to check on him and
yeah.
he's giving out and he's wanting to get out of bed. Because clearly, I mean, by the end of the story, it hasn't been that long.
Mm-hmm.
It's been maybe a day and a bit.
Yeah,
He's clearly fine.
yeah.
So, where was he shot exactly? And why did they keep him in bed for so long?
In the bum.
I think though I think the type of dynamic we have in the story between himself and Zoe, and we'll get to Zoe in a minute. Where we said Zoe was a little bit weakly handled last week. She didn't really do a whole lot in the first 4 episodes, and Jamie's in that boat this week.
Yeah,
I think this is kind of where people get the idea that you can't have 2 companions at the same time.
yeah,
That it's very difficult to manage them both, particularly because in this case they were also trying to manage Isabel.
yeah.
And I wondered because, like, Fraser decided during this story that he was leaving,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. And we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. But were they trying to write him out and write Isabel in? Or was it just that for some reason the story based companion was given a bit more priority in terms of our ongoing companions?
I honestly don't know. Like, because, see, I like, until like I read that. Sorry, you read out that he was thinking of leaving. I was like, we've seen at times where like a story based companion can outshine a regular,
Hmm.
but yeah, like I like usually in these cases, like, it's one companion is spotlighted for the entirety of the story.
Hmm.
As you say, but I've never seen one where it's like, kind of flipped that. like I think maybe with the exception of the Keys of Marinus, but that
Yeah.
was different locations, and it was like they were all separated, and
Almost
it
different
was
episodes. Like it was
yeah,
one episode each.
yeah. So it was all pushed into the story, which was grand. Here though, it is very telling. It's like, okay, part one is Jamie's story, part two is Zoe's story.
Yeah, I just think both could have been handled a little bit better.
Much better.
Yeah.
Cool. So Zoe,
Why are you still wearing the feather boa? Lose the feather boa.
if
Like,
it works for Hulk Hogan, it can work for Zoe.
but literally, like up until they go back to Isabel's house, which would be when did they go back to Isabel's house?
End of episode 6.
Mm. So we have 6 episodes where she's wearing that stupid like they went down into the sewers with the feather boa on.
Yeah.
Outrunning Cybermen with the feather boa on. I'm like, dude, ditch the boa. Like you don't need it.
It's not very combat efficient.
No. No, it gets caught on something. You know, no capes,
Yeah.
no feather boas. I don't know about you, but I was a little bit disappointed that she sort of rose to the bait in terms of the Brigadier and Jamie and following Isabel down into the sewers. I kind of would have liked her to be a bit more logical about it, as opposed to, you know, why don't we go down into the sewers alone because the brig made a possibly sexist comment.
Yeah, like so. I think she's coming a small bit more into her own in the second part of the story. Like, so she's not an automaton. She's actually very, very outspoken. And I commented last week, like, I think that Isabel's sole purpose was to try and act as a vehicle for Zoe's character to kind of express herself. But maybe it's, and again, sometimes the novelizations can come really handy for this, but maybe it's like now that she's able to kind of feel she can speak out a small bit more, maybe there's just lots of memories of like the guys on the wheel, kind of like, oh, little Zoe, you know, go do your fucking numbers, that kind of stuff, you know. So maybe that might be it.
Maybe I just have imagined that Zoe would see it from a logical perspective. Also, Zoe is aware of the dangers of the Cybermen. She's aware of what they can do. Why would she agree to go off to a sewers with no protection? They didn't have the little depolarizers at that time. It just seemed to be very illogical. And maybe this is it. Maybe Zoe is starting to use her emotions rather than logic, which is fine. But it just seemed very. I was a bit disappointed that she got caught up in it, like, you know.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, are they trying to be more feminist? But then the story itself indicates that decision was wrong. So
yeah, because
6-1, half dozen the other, really.
Yeah. What I do like though is a couple of things that happen in the story that I really quite enjoy or really liked was the Doctor saying Zoe's the person to help you out with this one.
Yeah.
The Brigadier backing her up against the base commander from Henlow.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually get to see her scientific acumen put into effect.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen it a bit more. Like, because we see it with the depolarizers, the Doctor defers to her to create them. And then we obviously see it with her doing the calculation. I would have liked to have seen a bit more with the depolarizer as opposed to her just mentioning it.
Yeah.
Maybe show her building one, like showing Watkins how to build one.
Yeah, or even just showing the soldiers how to apply them and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You know, just to have a little bit more.
Because in the same way that the unit soldiers address Jamie as Sir, I think it would be nice to have seen that kind of like, you know, kind of go, yes, ma'am, that type of thing.
Yeah. As opposed to, like, I mean, I do find it hilarious. Again, this is a scene I've seen before, and I didn't know where it was from. When the military base are celebrating the fact that they destroyed the invasion advanced fleet or whatever.
Yeah.
and they're sort of it's totally like it comes across as like a World War II film
Yeah.
or something like that, where the guy's like, "Oh, Brig, can we keep her? Like, she's great. She's better looking than any computer we ever had."
Yeah.
And that's great, but I would have liked to have seen it be more respectful
Yeah.
and less boys club with the "isn't she pretty and smart"
Yeah.
pat her on the head. Also, I mean, if you think about it, next to the Brigadier, I broke my ass off every time herself and Nick were together.
Yeah. Oh, she's
She looks like a doll.
yeah. She's tiny compared to him.
She's tiny compared to him. It's just like she literally comes up to like below his collarbone. It's like but yeah, so in terms of like the whole like them calling Jamie sir, I would have liked to have seen them give her some more respect
Yeah.
rather than just being like, "Oh, isn't she cute and she can do maths?"
Yeah.
Do you know? But that's probably me being a bit overly nitpicky because the scene is fun and it is funny.
Yeah.
Watching them celebrate her and cheering her on and stuff like that, and they clearly do appreciate it. I just would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit later on in the episode someone coming to her and being like, "Oh, ma'am, can you have a look at this?" or
Yeah.
something like that. Do you know?
Definitely. Be great if we could see that before her tenure runs.
Indeed. Did you have anything else on Zoe?
No. As I said, the second half was definitely her story.
Very much so. Very much so.
So now we have Isabel, Turner, and the Brig. So what order will we do it?
So I'm going to make my same comment on Turner this week that I made last week. The only extra bit on Turner this week is his relationship with Isabel. Other than that, Turner does his job.
Yeah.
And he does his job very well. I didn't appreciate him telling her to shut up.
Yeah.
Though in his defense, he was under a lot of pressure and one of his men just died. Because she ran off and wanted to prove that women can do it just as well as the boys, even though the boys have weapons and her, Jamie, and Zoe did not. Other than that, and clearly Isabel didn't hold a grudge against him. You know, she didn't take any offense to it.
No.
But yeah, other than that, again, I think he's a very competent first officer. You can sort of see him, you know, it's very much a Riker and Picard type thing.
Yeah.
Do you know, if we're going back to Star Trek analogies, you know, like it's very much the Brigadier in this case is kind of letting Turner take the lead in the field a lot more. And he's clearly very competent at that.
Yeah.
So I think like Picard and Riker is probably the best analogy to make there, where usually Picard was on the ship and Riker was on the away team.
Because like Turner does like emulate the Brig in some sense, like he's very kind of lead from the front, cover the rear thing. Because like we see that, you know, when he covers the escape from Watkins' house, you know.
The one thing I wondered though is, I wonder if he just didn't want to look up Jamie's kilt. When they're escaping from the sewer, he has a weapon, Jamie doesn't, and he has Jamie go last.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, do you just not want to look up his kilt when you're going up the ladder? If that's because that's the one thing where an argument I'm going to make in a second in regards to the Brigadier sort of falls flat. Because Jamie, while they do call him Sir, Jamie is a civilian.
Yeah.
And Jamie should have definitely gone up before Turner. And again, when the house is under attack, Jamie should have taken Watkins and Turner should have been the last to leave with the weapon, in my opinion. You know, you're saying like he's the first in, he should also be the last out. And in the two examples where we had it, he wasn't. Jamie was the last out.
No, but he covered, like, Watkins and Jamie got shot, and he stayed to make sure that they got out.
Oh, but he left first.
And then he came back.
And then he came back.
Yes, sorry, you're right. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah, so I think, you know, I think it's that he trusts Jamie and whatever, and that's fine. But, you know, you should be the last man to leave.
Yeah. Come to think of it, he's a terrible.
No, he is a very good leader and whatever, but, you know, he still has a few things to learn from the Brig. That.
Yeah.
If you think back to Web of Fear, when they were holding that door shut.
Yes. Yeah.
And the Brig told Jamie to run first.
Yeah, that's a great scene. Still a great
So I
scene.
think Turner still has a few things to learn, but
Mhm.
he's a very good Riker to the Brigadier's Picard.
Do you have much to say about Isabel?
She was right. She was a twit for going down into the sewers just to prove a fucking point.
Yeah.
I did find out something looking through the wiki. So in the sort of expanded
Yeah.
universe of books and comics and whatever, I think I've mentioned before, there's a particular book, it's like Who Shot Kennedy or something.
Mm-hmm.
And in that we find out that Isabel's Cybermen pictures,
Yeah.
they were basically, she was made a joke of on Fleet Street because they all thought they were fake.
For fuck's sake.
It's funny because the brig mentions it, that when they were doing the expanded universe, they actually brought that back
Mm-hmm.
and be like, oh, no one believed about the Cybermen, which makes sense why people don't remember them later.
Yeah.
Because everyone on Fleet Street thought that she faked them, which is a little bit disheartening.
Yeah. Especially after she kind of stupidly put her life at risk to get them.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. We'll talk about the Brigadier in a second, but yeah, my only thing for Isabel this time around is her and Jimmy are cute, her and Jimmy are cute together. But yes, she's correct. She was a twit, and also she shouldn't have been in that final attack on the compound just so she could take pictures. No.
No.
I imagine the only reason they brought her was because they knew that she'd try and sneak off on her own and go. And better have her where they know she is than leave her off on her own. Yeah, so bad decision making.
Yeah, very poor decision making. Although I do have the same note that she and Turner make a very cute couple.
Yes, they do.
So now on to the Brigadier.
So I have two funny bits about the Brigadier, and then we can go on to the Brigadier more as a character.
Okay.
First of all, ever since I mentioned that trivia note last week about how his mustache keeps changing,
Mm-hmm.
I could not stop staring at his mustache. And the differences I'm seeing is actually it's the
right
gap between the right and left halves of his mustache gets bigger and smaller. There's more skin showing sometimes than there is other times.
I think it points the right side is bigger than the left as well.
The second thing is I love the brig. I love him to bits.
Mm-hmm.
I love at one point there's a zoom out shot from his crotch as he's putting on his weapons belt. It's clearly meant to be showing him putting on the belt, but it's panned a little bit too low, so it just looks like it's zooming out from his crotch. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll stare at his crotch if you want me to, but not necessarily appropriate for a children's TV program.
Nope.
Onto him as a character, though, this time around. I think the big thing with the brig in this is the brig a misogynist?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Neither do I. A misogynist is a person who dislikes, despises, or is strongly prejudiced against women. He is none of those things.
No.
Is he a little bit old school sexist when it comes to, division of labor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe. However, the thing I would say in his defense, right, is I would have been very curious to know if he would have had the same reaction if Isabel and Zoe had been in the military. And this is the thing where I think that Turner's actions kind of counteract this argument a bit, but this is a military operation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a unit military operation. You can't have civilians, and to the brig, particularly female civilians, running around in dangerous situations without support.
No.
Unit has photographers, people who are photography trained on staff. They should be the ones to go because they are military officers and they can defend themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't think he was wrong. I think maybe he presented it badly. And you can clearly tell when Isabel's like, oh, you're such an anti-feminist. And he's like, okay. But I think it was more the fact that they were civilians that was the problem.
Yeah. I think that, I think it's a trend throughout his tenure on the show, is that with the brig, I suppose like a lot of people, it's he will have an opinion of you until you prove so otherwise.
Mm.
And I think that's irregardless of gender with him.
Yeah.
No, even once that's been proven, he still kind of errs on the side of, well, maybe how about we send someone else instead?
Yeah.
But it's never a sort of a doubt that they can do it. It's a, I don't want to put you at risk.
Yeah, and like we're going to see more of the Brigadier going forward.
With an actual proper mustache.
With an actual proper mustaches. But if we jump the timeline a little bit, just in case people are like, oh, I don't like the Brig, like he just comes across as a sexist or whatever. I love him. Like, I really genuinely do. In his next number of appearances, the women he interacts with are all civilians.
Mm-hmm.
It's not until hell, is it the Seventh Doctor that he meets a woman in unit? Or has a prolonged interaction with a female officer?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Yeah, so that's a long way off at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he treats them is as an officer.
Yeah.
Or as a soldier, depending on whoever we're talking about in a given instance. And yeah, that's kind of overshadowing a little bit my impression of him here. But given how good he is with Zoe later, with, like you said, giving her the respect, deferring to her for the calculation, telling people to listen to her, give her the 30 seconds she needs or whatever, I think it all goes back to the fact that they're civilians and it's his job to protect civilians.
Yeah. But even then, like as I said, like my point is kind of proven in the sense of until you like once you prove that you're able to back up your statement, like he'll back you. Like she helped him get the men back together with the depoterizers, and he was like, "Look, she's our best shot at stopping these ships coming in."
Yeah, I do still wonder though if the whole like the final push on the compound, I do wonder if he agreed to let Isabel go just because he was terrified that she'd go off on her own.
Yeah, like I was like,
very similar to someone we might meet later, who gets brought along because she will just go off by herself.
Yes. So now on to the villains.
Yes.
So we have Vaughan, Packer, and Cybermen.
I was trying to find a standalone clip of Vaughan saying Packer on YouTube, and I couldn't find one. But you can probably watch entire episodes of this.
Yeah.
On YouTube, I just don't want to be linking to that for copyright reasons. But if you're going to watch this story for no other reason, watch it for that.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I'm going to suggest that we do Cybermen first.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the Cybermen?
So we now have the classic depiction of the Cybermen in terms of their design.
Yeah, it's going to stay like this until at least the 80s.
Slight variations thereof, but it's the streamlined suit and the handles helmet. And I'm actually, miming the handles.
I can see it. It's very funny.
Yeah. And I think the teardrop eyes, I think. And I like this design because, again, it's streamlined, and again, they have individual fingers instead of the claws, because I didn't like the clawed hands. I thought that was kind of stupid. That being said, the Cybermen themselves do not do a whole pile in the story.
Yeah. We don't see the Cybermen on the streets attacking people.
No.
I'm guessing because of cost and time.
Yes.
Now, in the battles with them, you can tell that they're clearly they're clearly a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, it takes demolitions, like bombs, like it takes bazookas and grenades to take them
one
out.
Never mind. Yeah. My thing with the Cybermen as a whole, though, so including the planner, controller, whatever it was that Vaughan was talking to, is they were really playing the long game, and I don't know why. Like, Vaughan says that they've been doing this for 5 years. Why the fuck were they waiting that long?
Well, okay, so presumably it was to aid Vaughan in getting international electromatics to be international.
Yeah, but my question is why, though? Like, given the fact that as soon as things started going slightly off the rails for them, so when their invasion fleet was destroyed, they said, sure, fuck it, we'll just bomb the place. They clearly didn't care about taking the human race alive. So why invest this much time and energy into that endeavor when they clearly had no qualms about just nuking the place from orbit and taking whatever, because they wanted minerals, right? They wanted.
Well, they said minerals, but presumably they probably wanted to add more cyber
Yeah,
life.
but then that was clearly a secondary objective because then they were
Yeah,
planning on bombing the place.
yeah.
So why spend 5 years working to take over one planet?
Well, okay, so like one thing that's going to probably be done a lot is this whole thing of like, oh, we need a homing beacon to be able to send our fleet because no one
Mm.
can just fucking find the planet and then just head straight for it. It has to be, we need a homing beacon.
Which makes no sense.
Yeah, oh,
Because
stop.
how did you contact the planet in the first place?
Yeah. So again, this is just me kind of spitballing theories here, like, but again, okay, so get international electromagnetics to be as widespread it is, so that way you can take over more possible people. But obviously, in the business world, that probably would take a small bit of time,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, there's when it comes to the cyber aspects of things, there's a couple of unanswered questions in this one, kind of like Evil of the Daleks.
Yeah.
What is Planet 14? Never mentioned
Yeah.
again.
Apparently, it comes up in the 50th. It gets mentioned, I think, or in maybe it's not the 50th.
See, it's weird because of the fact that the Cybermen don't have time travel.
Nope.
So, like, how would they know about Telos?
Yeah.
Or Mondas or anything like that? They wouldn't. But also, those super strong humans.
Where the fuck do they go?
Yeah, they've nothing explained there. And I get the fact that there was no Cybermen there around for like Vaughan he had to speak entirely to the computer or to them. It's not even registered as a cyber planner because, like, again, it's like a rudimentary form of it. We don't know what it is, but I would have preferred to have like some sort of a figurehead, even if it's like an entombed Cyberman, like sitting on some sort of like weird emperor's throne, or like you get to see like
The Sutex Cyberman.
possibly, or even like a hat, like even like if you just had the torso coming out of the machine or something, because like I think having him just speak to essentially an answering machine is it loses something.
Yeah.
And Cybermen can be very intimidating, and we've seen them be very intimidating. We've seen them be like even if you just take Tomb the Cybermen and 10 Planet, just them alone, we've seen how really well they can be utilized.
Yeah.
But this is, I don't think the Cybermen for me, they don't make a huge impact in this story.
No, and I would kind of see them as they're the secondary villain.
Yeah.
They're the villain of the last third.
Yeah.
Do you know? Vaughan is our villain up until like the end of episode 7.
Yeah.
Vaughan is our villain.
They are the General Grievous of this fucking of this thing, like,
We started with Star Trek and now we're jumping over to Star Wars.
Yep.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I think Grievous is probably the best example to give for that.
Yeah. And like I'm saying this knowing full well that not everyone watched the animated Clone Wars series that was meant to bridge episodes 2 and 3.
Yeah. I think if you want to be a little bit more generous, there may be Django, in the sense that Django appears at the start of Attack of the Clones,
Yeah.
isn't really seen throughout most of it, and then appears back up at the end and gets his head lopped off.
Yeah, possibly.
Spoilers, by the way, for like a 20-year-old movie.
Yep. Yeah, it's just like we can make comparisons all the fucking live long day, but yeah, no, I don't think like they're not the central villain in this story. No. So how about we move on to the central villain and his gal Friday.
Packer is clearly done with all of this shit.
Oh, but I think Packer is a great character in the second half of the story because he stops being a goon and he becomes the voice of reason.
Yeah.
You know that famous video meme of like, where like the Nazi high commander telling Hitler, that like Hitler's outlining the plans for how to defend Berlin, and he's just like, Hitler, like, they're not actually there. There's no one there, and like, Hitler starts fucking freaking out.
Yeah.
Packer was like that. Packer was like showing him on the map. We're fucked here. 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 And Vaughan is like, it's fine. I'm pretty sure. Like, I'm confident we'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And he's just like, are you fucking for real?
Yeah. I felt kind of bad for him, to be honest.
I agree.
He did everything he could to as a villain. He did everything he could to follow Vaughan's orders. He was a bit crap at it. In fairness, he wasn't the most effective hired soldier ever, but he tried, and he did his best to. But like you said, like, he clearly clued into the fact. I think he was cluing in like at the end of episode 4, but definitely into episode 5. That Vaughan had completely lost control of the situation, and it makes me wonder because Packer wasn't someone that was mindlessly following orders. He knew what the plan was. He was very involved in the plan. He knew the full extent of the plan. And it makes me wonder, why did he agree to the plan? What was in it for Packer?
Australia.
Because you kind of get this, like, when he's eavesdropping on Vaughan's conversation, it's sort of framed as, oh, what the fuck is he talking about? I was like, what the hell did you think would happen?
Yeah, like, I think if Vaughan didn't have such tunnel vision, I think Packer's opinions could have led to a very different outcome for the story.
Oh yeah, I mean, kill the people who are fucking things over for us. Keep a closer eye on UNIT. Like, Packer, while he may have been incompetent in his execution, he was aware of everything.
Yeah.
And he was aware of the potential impact of everything. He was just shit at resolving things.
Kind of reminds me of a small bit of the two boys from the Dominators.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar mentalities in the sense of, was it Toba and Rago? Yeah, Rago is like, going, as you said, the mission comes first. He was like, no, we will succeed. And Toba, like, he is bloodthirsty goon, but he's like, you're not seeing the fucking thorns in our side here, are you?
Yeah, exactly. So I think Packer, for an underling, I think he was a very interesting underling.
Yeah, and I think they can really help make a story good. Yeah, because like, if you've just got a musclehead toady, you're just waiting for them to get the shit knocked out of them, and it's like, it's satisfying, but it's not.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that character too much already.
Yeah,
like, I keep thinking back to your man from the Macra Terror.
Yeah, Ola.
Yeah, like, he was just a mindless brute. Now, yes, he was being controlled, but we kind of discussed how much is he being controlled.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Packer was a very good and very well written, very well acted contribution to the story.
Yeah, I agree. So, Vaughan.
Okay, I'm going to give you my analogy for Vaughan.
Okay.
Not quite in the same way, because we only have one episode out of 8 really where Vaughan turns around, right? Vaughan is Damar.
Yeah, I can see it.
Perfectly willing to sell out, in Vaughan's case, the rest of the planet, in Damar's case, the rest of the Alpha Quadrant, so long as he gets what he wants. And he's in control and he's in power. As soon as that power is taken away from him and he realizes that he's not going to be in control and that he and those like him, so Packer and anyone else who's working for him, is just going to be walked all over, he has his eyes opened and he wants to help the good guy.
Yeah.
DS9, Damar, right hand of the Dominion, head of the Cardassian military, whatever. Perfectly happy to go along with it until Cardassians start being killed and he realizes that the Dominion don't care about the Cardassians and are happy to let them all die. And then suddenly Damar turns turncoat and is sort of...
Yeah, he like makes the video, the worldwide video speech to like stand up against the Dominion and rise up against them.
Yeah, and like he forms a resistance and he reaches out to Starfleet and ruining Damar's character completely. But again, the show's 20 years old with
Wait,
Damar is sort of
when you said ruining the character, are you saying you were spoiling that whole thing,
yeah,
or the
yeah.
character was ruined?
No, spoiling
Yeah,
what happens in
yeah,
the
yeah,
show. But Damar is really presented in many ways as sort of quote unquote the good Nazi.
yeah.
Do you know? And I was actually watching a video about Damar the other day. It was a video from a while back, but I watched it again the other day
Mhm.
around the reason why redemption of a character like that works in a story, in a fictional capacity. I would like to point this out, in a fictional capacity.
Mhm.
In order for that redemption to fully work, the character has to die
Yeah.
in trying to fulfill their purpose.
Mhm.
And I think that kind of rings true with Vaughan. I think had Vaughan survived his, because I don't know if we would really say he was redeemed, but like
No,
his turnabout wouldn't be as powerful if he had lived.
no. There's no redemption. It's very much like Toberman
Mm.
in the sense of you have fucked me over. I'm hell bent on getting revenge, and I'm going to go down swinging.
Yeah.
So, and as like much like Toberman, had he survived, his character would not have changed. He would still be that power hungry person.
Yeah.
And he was going to, as I say, he was going to face a trial for war crimes, and maybe like there was that whole hope in the doctor's mind of rehabilitation, like, or that's just an unvoiced theory in my head. But Vaughn, like, unlike Mavic, so I made the comparison last week to Mavic Chen.
Mm.
Mavic Chen stays deluded the whole time.
Yeah.
To his death, like to his, like he thinks that, like, and he's just like the Dalek Supreme is just like, no, shoot this motherfucker. Whereas Vaughan, as we've seen throughout, has like a contingency for contingencies for contingencies. And the fact now that his ambitions are crumbled, and he knows that, look, he's not going to get away from this scot free. And it's just like, what, fuck it. If I'm going down swinging. And he does. Like, he is fully out to get the Cybermen. And his Kevin Stoney sells that death scene so well.
We've talked about like great supporting cast in the past, right?
Yeah.
And I think with this, I think we had a very good supporting cast. I think
Yeah.
Nick. I love Nick. Do you know what I mean? And I love the Brig as a character, so he was always going to be great. I think Isabel, Jimmy, and Packer were all very good, but it's Kevin Stoney as Vaughan.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
yeah.
his performance is outstanding.
He is, as I said last week, you're never comfortable watching him because you always think that he's got something up his sleeve. So like there are stories where you know that the Doctor's got the upper hand. For me, no. Vaughn is in complete control of this whole thing.
Yeah. The thing is, with the one thing I would say is that, like, on the whole, like, you can never feel comfortable in his presence. You can never feel comfortable watching him, except when he starts helping the Doctor, because, like you said, he is committed 120% to that action, and that comes across. You don't fear, or at least I didn't fear at any point once they started working together. Like, particularly like once Packer had been killed, right? It's kind of at that point. You don't, or I didn't get the feeling at any point after that Vaughn was going to stab him in the back,
No.
that he was going to knock him off the side of the building or anything. It was, nope, I'm committed to this action 120%. And I think to go from, it makes me uncomfortable just looking at this guy, to 100% confidence that he would have the Doctor's back, I think that's an amazing turnaround for a character in a very believable way, and it was done very well by Kevin Stoney.
And it's actually very reminiscent of a character that I really enjoy in multimedia is Magneto. Magneto is a great adversary, and when he helps out, like, it's like, that when he helps the X-Men, he's there to help them, and it's like at the end, it's like, while I'm helping you, I'm your ally. I'm not going to fuck you over. But once we stop being allies, and we're back to square one again. So I think here, once had Vaughn survived, once the Cyberman threat was over, then that's when he would become an adversary for the Doctor again.
Yeah, I wonder though if he had survived. I wonder if Vaughan would have just tried to just go to ground.
Completely. He would have run. He would have completely run.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he actually would have been a villain for the Doctor, like in the sense that like Magneto is obviously a recurring villain in the X-Men franchise. I don't know if he would have been a recurring. I think he would have gone to ground and stayed down for a long time.
Yeah. But at least, like, you'd have the potential for another story because, look, Kevin Stoney, as we've seen twice now, is a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
And you know that you're in for a solid performance if you decided to bring Vaughan back.
Yeah.
You know?
And we are going to see him again in another story. Not Vaughan, but Kevin Stoney, the actor.
Yeah.
Not going to be for a while, though.
No, not for a while.
Not for a long while, actually, if I think about it.
Yeah. So, and I think, as I said, and we'll probably get into it in the overall, but once again, in terms of like supporting casts, this is again one of the strong contenders, but it's mostly down to Nick and Kevin.
Yeah, I would put this cast right up there with Web of Fear and the Moonbase in terms of our good supporting cast. I think that trio of supporting cast is very good.
Big time. Absolutely big time.
And it really sort of rings true to me why you and I decided to do this based on character rather than based on even the story or the effects or the guys on Mission Log do morals, meanings, and messages. Like, we didn't go down that route. We went down the route of the characters, because if the characters are good and believable, then 9 times out of 10 your story is good and believable.
And like we made, I think, the example of the Aztecs, where a lot of the scenery is painted backdrops. You don't, or even the Romans, where you can see the sets are wobbling. You don't care because the acting is phenomenal and it just draws you in. And this is now we have the beauty of location shooting here and bigger budget. But again, you don't really fucking care because it's the acting, and the acting is phenomenal.
Or Marco Polo, where we don't actually have anything.
Oh,
yeah, we just have audio.
I think that's probably the biggest success for this podcast in terms of your investment, because Marco, the full 7 episodes of Marco Polo helped get you into the missing stories.
Yeah. Whereas I was very hesitant to watch them.
Yeah, before. Hugely. So, across 2 weeks, we have told another epic story. A bit shorter this time around. I didn't have to say thank fuck at the end of the support summary. Or that support summary, the summary. I remember when Shane, one of our long-term listeners, listened to that, and he messaged me and he said he was in a queue in a Centra getting a roll. He laughed out loud.
Yeah, no, and thankfully, not to be letting the cat out of the bag, I don't think there's any episode in this that we would just skip.
No.
There was no raising your glass wink to camera.
No, there wasn't. There really wasn't. And again, the beauty of it was that there's a perfect split. There's a like, and whereas in the master plan, it had to be the 4 and the 8, because the first 4 was the end of the Katarina and Brett cycle. Yeah. And then the remaining 8 was the Sarah Kingdom cycle. Yeah. It would have been stupid to split the 2, 6 and 6. Yeah. Whereas here we had the perfect non-Cybermen first 4, and then Cybermen for the secondary 4.
I just remember that we did do that one as 4 and 8, so you did have to do an 8 episode recap all in one go.
Yep.
Oh, there's a reason why we didn't do that again.
No. And we never will.
Anyway.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this story as a whole?
So, in terms of a Doctor Who story, this is a rock solid entry, I think. It's great. I found it, like you complained last week, found it very hard to not watch more than 1 episode a night. Yeah. As a Cyberman story, though, it's not a great one.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And we've made those kind of comparisons before, like in terms of, it's a great story, but it's not like we talked about the Massacre, which was like, at times for me, it was an interesting historical fiction documentary. As a Doctor Who story, it wasn't great because there was no doctor. There was no doctor in it, and Stephen couldn't lead it. We talked about the performances from the guest cast, and both the core and the supporting cast just knocked it out of the park. It was just so good. Great chemistry between everyone. And it's going to be a testament to Nick Courtney that his character is brought back so much because of his chemistry with everyone.
Yeah, I would agree.
I enjoyed having Vaughan as the villain because he always seemed to be on top of the scenario. Even when he's fighting on two fronts, because he's got to deal with the unit and he's also got to keep the upper hand against the Cybermen. My deductions though are for a slightly rushed finish, I thought.
Yeah, it was probably the shortest 12 minutes ever rather than the longest 12 minutes ever.
It just felt very short. Some bits were clearly meant to have been, as you said, like Gregory's death scene, the rescue of Watkins, also Vaughan's cyberization. Because when Watkins shoots him, the bullet, there's no explanation as to why the bullets don't work, because he's got smoking holes in his chest, so clearly he's been cyberized.
Yeah, they never really go anywhere with that. It kind of goes back to the very strong humans thing.
Yeah,
I to be honest, I sort of took it that he is a head of a multi-billion-pound international organization.
he's always wearing
He was wearing Kevlar or something.
Bulletproof turtleneck.
Or something under his turtleneck.
And as well, there is Jamie's Ben moment, as I'm going to call it. So I was toying with, some of the, how big are these deductions or whatever, and I was like, it's not lower than a 4, but I wouldn't put it. But because of the deductions, I wouldn't put it as a 5. So I've kind of not met in the middle. I've gone 4.25.
Okay, I can see that. I can see where you went with that.
How about you?
Cool. So for me, I had a comment that I wanted to include in the overall. So I watched this with the subtitles on, as I've said, I do that all the time. Whenever Unit was on screen, particularly driving scenes with Unit, the subtitles literally described it as jaunty military music. The jaunty military music that sounded like it was something from fucking Magic Roundabout. Again, tonal issue, maybe. You're like, oh yeah, let's go do it. And you're like, what the hell is that? But yeah, so that was my funny thing, just overall speaking. For me though, I mean, I mentioned last week, it was very hard for me to stop at episode 4 last week. But I made myself stop for 2 reasons. One, I do prefer just to watch what we're going to talk about and then stop, because it's easier for me. Because I have a brain like a sieve, unlike you. And second, I had to work, and I wasn't going to be able to watch another 2 hours of Doctor Who before going to bed. I think it was a great story. I think there was lots of action. There was clearly meant to be more, but the amount of action we did get was very, very good.
Yeah.
And the scale of the story, when you had the ground-based stuff, you also had the missile attacks and stuff like that, I thought was very, very good. Eventually everyone had something to do. We had the brig back, who I love with all my heart. In terms of my negatives, I'll be honest, I didn't dock too much off for the Cybermen not being that strong, because possibly controversial thing, the Daleks and the Cybermen as villains, I never particularly care about. I'm much more invested story-wise, and I think you and I have discussed this, separately before, in the human villain. With the Cybermen and the Daleks, they're sort of, what you're going to get every time.
Yeah.
Whereas I always find the human story very interesting. So I found Vaughan incredibly interesting in this story. And like I said, the sort of correlation my brain was making to Damar from DS9. Yeah. So for me, the fact that the Cyberman aspect of the story was a bit weak. I didn't particularly care. It didn't really bother me, to be honest.
No, I was going to say, because if you think about it, all our 5 out of 5s have been human villains, as far as I'm aware.
It's a preference of mine. The Cybermen and the Daleks, they have their place in Who history. And some Dalek and Cyberman stories are fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's usually the people in those stories that make them fantastic for me, not the Cybermen or the Daleks themselves.
Of the 2, I prefer the Daleks. because I think with their time travel technology and their constant advancements, which we've seen and we've commented on every time we've seen the Daleks, there's always something new to them. Whereas with the Cybermen, it's almost like the Terminator franchise, where it's like, the model is slightly upgraded, but it's in core, like it's something very, very, very similar, and you don't see any difference to their society.
Yeah, I think the difference with the Cybermen for me is we've commented before about, did Star Trek rip off the Cybermen when they created the Borg? Right?
Yeah.
I find the Borg more interesting than the Cybermen because of Locutus, because of the Borg Queen, and whatever. Whereas the Cybermen, the whole idea behind them is that you remove all human emotion.
Yeah.
So there's nothing for you to tap into with them.
Yeah.
Like, whereas like the Borg don't have emotions either.
Yeah.
But they have the Borg Queen who clearly does. Or you have Locutus who was Picard and you're emotionally invested in that. So for me, the whole Cybermen not being, overly developed in this story, I didn't particularly care. I think the scenes of them walking around London were cool.
There's actually one scene in this involving the Cybermen that I think is fantastic, and it's when they use Watkins' machine on it, and it just tears off down the sewer, just screaming in agony over the fact that it's feeling
like
an
that.
emotion.
That was brilliant.
That was done
That
fantastically.
that was very good. I thought that was fantastically done.
Yeah.
But the Cybermen themselves, I never particularly care.
Yeah.
I do think that was done better than the weird Daleks doing dodgems in.
Yeah. It's a train. Actually, I just had really terrifying because we talked about Rutledge's forced suicide as being a very dark moment. Can you imagine if they had been able to amplify the fear signal and use it on the Cybermen forces on Earth? That would have been a very distressing scene to watch.
Well, I think would have made that supremely fucked up.
Yeah.
In a somewhat amazing way.
Mm-hmm.
They made the Dalek afraid, or they made the Cyberman afraid. It's
Yeah.
feeling emotion, right? It's tapping into fear.
Yeah.
Why is it afraid?
Hmm.
What's it afraid of? And by introducing any emotion, for example, fear, is it aware of what it used to be? So can you imagine a Cyberman trying to tear its face covering off?
Yeah.
Do you know? I think that would have been fantastic.
It would have been very dark. Way too dark.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah.
It's not the Colin Baker years yet.
But yeah, so going back to my score, so
yeah, sorry.
Story was great, characters were great, actors were great. Vaughan was fantastic. Cybermen, I don't particularly care if they weren't well developed because they weren't the priority of the story anyway. So I'm not particularly plussed. Your other call out that you had was around Jamie's channeling Ben. I saw it as a bit of a wink, taking the piss a small bit. So I didn't judge him too harshly on that, but it is going to be something I'm going to keep an eye on and see if it comes up again. So for me, I gave it a 4.5.
Yeah. I see. I think with everything that I found fault with it, the story didn't deserve below a 4 because it is. You've got. I would say the finale is probably the weakest of all 8 episodes. It has some good moments, but you've got 7 fantastic episodes that lead into a decent finale. But I think it's just a small bit too rushed, and the pacing just we've had 1 5 out of the entire run, and that was Enemy of the World because that was paced so perfectly the whole way through.
Out of
Troughton's Run.
Troughton's Run,
yeah. So we'll just have to see if there's something that can rival it.
Yeah, no, I think though, one thing I'm glad to see, again, I'm just looking at our scores here for this season. So starting with the Web of Fear, we did see a dip in scores. So Web, we both gave 4.5. Web was fantastic. So actually, Enemy was 5, Web was 4.5. But then Fury were dropping down to 3. Wheel in Space, I gave a 2.5. The Dominators, we both gave a 2.5. Now we're back on that upswing again, which is great to see. So the Mind Robber last week we gave a 3, and this week we're both giving 4.25 and 4.5 respectively.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see we're back on that upswing.
Yeah.
We have 4 more stories to talk about this season, and hopefully they can remain, like this one, strong and consistent.
Because we also have one more epic story.
Mm.
It's the War Games, which, just for advance notice, will be split into a 5 and 5.
Yeah.
Because I ain't doing 10.
Yeah.
And just to, I suppose, tease a small bit, I found a natural split that if I'm knowing you the way that I do, you're probably going to fucking hate me for it.
Is it a good thing that we record this the night before we talk? So I can technically the following night pick up and keep going.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So look, we've come to the end of the invasion. I think it's been a very interesting story as a whole. I think it's been a very interesting 2-part discussion. Next week, we'll be joining the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe as they face the Crotons.
Not croutons. Crotons.
Well, yeah. Crotons with a K, not croutons with a C.
There will be no soup involved in this story. Or will there? Soup. Until next week, guys. Bye. Bye.